If God did not create the world, then what is his use? And if he did, then what is his explanation? A child's question has given way to an adult's dilemma. A God too indisposed to do the work of creation is fated adrift to irrelevance, if only because his demand for adoration would be considerably out of line with his record of accomplishment. But if God did create the world, the problem that God is designed to solve reappears as a problem about himself. It is this destructive dilemma that Dawkins calls the ultimate Boeing 747 gambit. The appeal to a 747 is meant to evoke a light-hearted quip attributed to the astrophysicist Fred Hoyle. The spontaneous emergence of life on Earth, Hoyle observed, is about as likely as a tornado sweeping through a junkyard of assembling a Boeing 747 out of debris. Although an atheist, Hoyle was skeptical about Darwin's theory of evolution and Dawkins passionate in its defense. Since the junkyard expresses with rare economy precisely the odds favoring the spontaneous appearance of life, they are remarkably prohibitive on virtually every calculation. It has been an irritation to Dawkins ever since it made its appearance. With their consciousness unraised, a great many people have evidently concluded that when it comes to the origins of life, the junkyard is all that Darwin offered. But Dawkins affirms if a tornado cannot do the job of creating life, then God cannot do the job of creating the universe. The tornado is inadequate because life is improbable, and God is inadequate for the same reason. The counterstroke that persuaded Dawkins that he has initiated an intellectual maneuver, judo-like in its purity of effect and devastating in its consequences. The ultimate 747 gambit, Dawkins writes, comes close to proving that God does not exist. Fred Hoyle's death before he could appreciate the extent of his discomfiture, Dawkins no doubt regards as display of peevish irresponsibility. Although Dawkins writes with quiet confidence about what he intends to do, which is to give the deity a thrashing, and then, having thrashed him, writes again about what he has done. What he is doing is rather less clear. At times, Dawkins asserts that God is an irrelevance because he has been assigned the task of constructing a universe. That is improbable. If the universe is improbable, it is obviously no solution to postulate something even more improbable. Why an improbable universe demands an improbable God, Dawkins does not say, and I do not know. There are other passages in the God delusion of more analytic refinement. In these, Dawkins extends to a convivial pseudopod toward the concepts of complexity and information. Under the influence of these concepts, Dawkins often writes that unless God is himself complex, he is bound to an inadequate to account for the complexity of the universe. The same observation he sometimes makes in terms of information. If Dawkins is casual about these concepts to the point of slackness, it is because he believes that whether his argument is expressed in terms of information or complexity, God will emerge with his irrelevance undiminished. The 747 gambit, although hardly a model of fastidiousness, conveys a beefy impression of authority, so much so that scientists who never thought seriously about issues of religion at once wondered why they did not think of it themselves. And having not thought of it at all, they often appear to have thought of it after all. Publishing his thoughts in Gene, of all places, The distinguished molecular geneticist Emile Zuckerkandl had argued that the deity, if it exists, would represent something like a pathology of the state of being. I had very much hoped that after beginning with pathology, Zuckerkandl would continue to some form of exciting degeneracy, but it was not to be. Zuckerkandl in the end does not offer homegrown, but homeopathic, a dilute solution of the 747 gambit. His target is very much theories of intelligent design. Designating the intelligent designer as the higher intelligence, he writes that if complexity is a problem for naturalistic explanations, the higher intelligence itself is first to have to face this problem. Intelligent design, thus, does not solve any problems posed by complexity. It only transposes the origins of complexity from the observable world and makes these origins inaccessible to inquiry. These words that display a somewhat Teutonic sternness in attitude. Less demanding critics observe that shoveling problems backwards until they are out of sight is not only the tactic of common sense, but the only tactic in common use. When scientists appeal to various unobservable entities, universal forces, grand symmetries, twice differential functions as in mechanics, Calabi-Yau manifolds, ionic bonds, or quantum fields, the shovel is in plain sight, but what has been shoveled is nowhere to be seen. Why physicists should enjoy inferential advantages, denied theologians, Zuckerkandl cannot say, does not say. The difficulty with these arguments, they form a genre, is that they endeavor to reconcile two incompatible tendencies in order to force a dilemma. On the one hand, there is the claim that the universe is improbable. On the other, the claim that God made the universe. Considered jointly, these claims form an unnatural union. Probabilities belong to the world in things which happen because they might. Creation to the world in which things happen because they must. We explain creation by appealing to creators, whether deities or the inflexible laws of nature. We explain what is chancy by appealing to chance. We cannot do both. If God did make the world, it is not improbable. If it is improbable, then God did not make it. The best way we could say is that God made a world that would be probable had it been produced by chance. But it wasn't, and so he didn't. This is a discouraging first step in an argument said to come close to proving that God does not exist.